Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. It's always a pleasure to see these bright, smiling faces here, ready to learn. And today I will be sharing with you some of my thoughts on communication. And I titled this one, Are You Listening? This is from, there's a flyer going around from my Tools for Successful Living workshop. Yeah, that's fine. Either way.
Oh, same thing.
The opposite. And we spend years and years in school learning how to read and how to write. And sometimes you might in college have one speech class, and that's why we're here in Toastmasters, to learn to be better speakers. But how many classes did you take in listening? Probably none. And it's one of the lost arts in our society, I think. So this is what communication often looks like in our society. People talk at you, and we all have that experience. Infomercials, salespeople, some salespeople, I don't want to degrade all salespeople. People that are angry, right? They talk at you. They're going one direction, they're talking at you. And it can activate the fight or flight syndrome. Either you run away from it or you fight back. It's a natural instinct. If somebody's coming at you, you fight back. Whether you're right or wrong, it's just a natural instinct. A second way we communicate is talking to you. I'm going to talk to you, and this is ingrained in me because my mother used to say, wait till your father gets home. He's going to give you a good talking to. And parents need to be aware of this one particularly, because they talk to their children, and it's still one way. I'm going to tell you how you're wrong, and I'm right, and there's no input back from the child. And a much more effective way to communicate is talk with each other. It's a two-way communication. Each side is listening. It's much more effective. And I have this quote, and I think this is really important in the art of listening. Almost always, when a person realizes he has been deeply heard, his eyes moisten. I think in some real sense, he is weeping for joy. It is as though he were saying, thank you, God. Somebody heard me. And this is the important part to me. Someone knows what it's like to be me. That's the power of listening. And that was by Carl Rogers, who was a preeminent psychologist, founder of person-centered psychology. A fundamental skill, listening. I call it heart-centered listening. Others call it empathetic listening. There are different names for it, but that's not the important part. But in our listening continuum, there are many levels, and not listening at all is something that goes on. How many of you are guilty of cell phones? Yeah, I'm listening to you, and we're texting away or doing something. I actually witnessed a conversation on the telephone. The person put down the phone, walked out to the kitchen area, made a cup of tea, and was walking back. And I go, aren't you on the phone with your sister? And she goes, yeah. And she picked up the phone, as if nothing had happened at all. And I go, is this the state of communication now? Half listening. And we know this one, all of us, right? We're doing some other task and we're listening. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear it. And then if you actually question them, what did I just say? Oh, I don't know. So we're only really halfway listening. We're driving and listening, There's a lot of distractions. And then there's listening for content. Well, I have a shopping list and I need to get eggs and this and this. I got it. You have a punch list to do at work. Okay, I got it. That's content level. That's the surface level of listening. And that's most of what we're trained to do. We listen for the content of something. But at the heart level, it's different. We're listening for the meaning underneath. And when I went to school, I went to an experiential school in psychology. The professor, we would have question and answer time, and the person came up and started talking, and the professor goes, and she was talking about, oh, her husband is this and that, and the professor said, when was the last time you talked to your father? I get that he molested you when you were about 5 or 6 years old. And she started to weep, this very thing, like she was heard. And several of us were sitting there and go, how did she know that? Because she was so skilled at listening and being with someone at the heart center level that she heard the cries from inside and knew something was up. So it's often when we're talking not about work necessarily, but with friends and colleagues, it's about what's underneath. The words are actually superfluous. It's the meaning. I want to be heard. We say I want to be heard, but it's really I want to be felt. And so what it does is demonstrates respect, concern, and interest for the person you're communicating with. It builds trust. So even in a negotiation, if the other side feels that I'm really listening to your point of view, then we start to build more trust. And it helps to build a safe space where we can, where we're open to communicate and actually say how we feel. This heart-centered listening, empathetic listening. It's a safe space. And it communicates that you're here now and available to that other person. And too often in our current society, we're somewhere else. We're doing 3 things at once. I'm thinking about going here. But when you sit down and say, I'm going to be in this empathetic listening mode, in this heart-centered listening mode, it changes you inside and you show up in a different way. And the other person, they know that they have your undivided attention. And this builds confidence in you as a caring person that they can trust. It's very important. And how do you do this? It's how you show up in the room. You can do it standing, you can do it walking into the room, but it's a place inside of yourself that's peaceful. And it clears the distractions. So it's an intention you set for yourself. I'm going to be present for whoever I need to be present with, right here and right now. When I walk into this room, I don't have other things to do. I have this to do with you. I'm here and present, not somewhere else. And this is counter to the fight or flight syndrome. It's whatever the situation is going on, whatever the other person is going through, you can calmly acknowledge what their personality is going through. They may be very upset, they may be angry, whatever's going on, it's their personality that it's experiencing that. not them as a soul, as a person. So you don't have to tap into their anger or their upset. You don't have to engage in it, but you can still be centered and heart-centered and peaceful. And that really goes a long way to diffusing situations. And I've had this experience. I used to work for a university, and I was in charge of all of the practice rooms. I had the keys to them, and all of the piano majors had their own keys so they could practice anytime they wanted. And a professor had lost the master key to the building. So in the infinite wisdom of the campus police, the day before piano juries, they rekeyed the building without telling anybody. And piano juries decide whether you move forward in your music career or not. And this woman came into my office and was screaming at me. She had her jury in an hour and she wasn't able to warm up. It takes 2 hours to warm up, and she has this big, and she's just screaming, and I was standing there listening. I hear you. You seem very upset. I get that you're very upset. In about 15 seconds, she stopped. And, oh, I'm not angry with you. I'm just frustrated. And I got right then and there, it's not about me, and it's not about her anger, and I don't have to engage in other people's anger. And the only way to have solutions is when you don't engage in other people's anger. When you can be in that heart-centered place and listen to them. She felt heard. She felt trust in me, that I could hear her. And the final part of that story was when I got to work that morning, I couldn't get in either, so I went to campus police and they gave me a master key, and I said, I can solve your problem. I have the key to let you in. And so this is where I learned this at a deep level. Other people's issues are not yours unless you allow it. And you don't have to take things personally, regardless of what anybody else says or does. You can always, and this is another skill we teach, is seeing the loving essence, or basically seeing that at the heart of every person is someone that has hopes, dreams, expectations, and is seeking love just like we are. And if we can bypass the personality nonsense, we can tap into that. And so that's what I have for you today, heart-centered listening, a very important skill, and it's part of our Tools for Successful Living program. If you have more questions about it, you can talk to me after the meeting. Thanks.